Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, and we're here to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist in private practice. At least an easy half of my practice, maybe more, has to do with ADHD. I do assessments, treatments, that sort of thing for ADHD families. And I have been doing it for a long time. Okay, I am also the father of an ADHD child. And what I want to do, and what screams out to me since I've been working with ADHD. Okay, ADHD, when I first started, actually when my son was first born, was not particularly well known. It wasn't particularly well researched. We had doubts about whether or not it really was a something. And still, to this day, you have people who, obviously they're not particularly well informed, but that they don't believe there's such a thing as ADHD. They think he's just a normal boy or girl, whichever. Don't believe that there's a treatment for it. Don't believe in medication, all kinds of stuff like that. And we have to deal with that. But at least now, if you go to the science part, that's the one where they have actual research studies, and they have control groups and people who were in treatment, and they can tell the difference between what is an accidental response and what's a scientific response. All those kinds of things are important. Okay, otherwise you're going to spend a lot of years messing around trying to find things out yourself that other people have already researched and have written about. Anyway, so what we've been talking about the last couple of sessions, given the time of year it is that getting ready for school. And I've covered, I think, about 2 sessions now, and we're going for a third one. And I will repeat some of the stuff from the previous ones. First, we talked about getting back into the school pattern, the school rhythm of, we're talking about biorhythms basically, okay? Most parents let their kids have a little more freedom with their schedule over the summer, and that's not really a problem, but you've got to get back to what was the what the schedule is that they're going to need to be in school. And you can't just set the alarm one night and expect that everything's going to go fine the next day, because I guarantee you it is not going to go fine the next day. You're going to get a kid who's used to getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden you're going to try to get him up at 6:30. I wish you lots of luck, but I don't have great expectations that this will be a good outcome. So you want to start out with the biorhythms and start getting the patterns back of getting up at whatever the time is you have to get up to get to school. And I mean, you can only do so much with this, but at least bedtimes and getting up in the morning, you need to start putting that back in. If your child's on medication, and you've let them have a holiday over the summer from their medication, then it's time to start adding medication back into their routine. That way you'll have time to address some things. If kids are growing, they change, their bodies change, they get bigger. There are tremendous number of organ systems that are adapting and adjusting and growing and developing and that sort of thing, and that can sometimes have an impact on medication, and particularly dosage, because sometimes you will need to increase their medication over time, and you need time to start sorting that out with your doctor. So that's a real deal. And then the next thing is more administrative, and that's if your child has a 504 plan or an IEP, and if he doesn't have at least one of those, or she doesn't have one of those, why not? Okay. Uh, 504 plans are the most common thing for an ADHD child. And basically, that's just first of all, the school knows the situation, and you have had meetings with the teachers and the administration and have set up a plan for your child that doesn't overly penalize them for things they can't control, like exactly how their brain works. Okay, so you've got to have that in place, and you've got to, first of all, you have to keep reminding people that there is one in place. Those are things that tend to fade into the background, and a lot of times, even the main teacher for your child sometimes doesn't know they have a 504 plan. So you need to be reminding them of that. But the first thing you need to do is to review it. Is it relevant? Is it still showing the things that they need for the way their behavior is now? Because they adapt and adjust, and their brain develops over time, so that things like overt hyperactivity kind of fade away. But you're still left with the problems with concentration of focus, organization, time management, those kinds of things. So the focus of your 504 plan may need to change to reflect some of those changes. And you need to be looking at what you've got, and look at the documentation, because, like the lawyers say, if it ain't written down, it didn't happen. And so you got to make sure that you've got written and documented what you need for your child. And you've got to make sure that it is current and relevant. So check those out. I know they're not fun reads, but you've got to make sure that your child is being protected. And you need to have that kind of stuff on early, because if you wait until it's SAT time, that's too late. You're going to have a hard time getting any kind of accommodations that late in their academic career. And that may affect their ability to go to college. So be proactive and get on that. So then of course you have to establish your interactions with the teachers. And depending on what grade your child's in, there may be more than one of them. But you need to spend the time beforehand meeting with them, and it wouldn't hurt to have a copy of the 504 plan for them to look at. But, just kind of meet them, let them know who you are, let them know that you know what the rules are for the interactions with the school system. Not in a threatening way, but just, that, I know about 504 plans, and I know about the federal law, and I want to work together with you to try to have the best year we can, and so on. And I may have mentioned last time, but I'm not sure. In some 504 plans, you in some school systems, you actually have a voice in what teacher your child gets. Okay, this would normally have happened at the end of the year, and you should, in the future, make sure that you have some input, because there are teachers who are tremendously good with ADHD kids, and there are some teachers who are famously awful with these same children. And it'd be up to you, and the school system knows. I mean, the teachers know, the administrators know, and they may not want to admit that particularly, but they do know which teachers are really good with an ADHD child and which teachers are really famously bad. And, And I think I've mentioned before, but I have had the opportunity over the years to see, a whole lifetime of different report cards and things for a number of different years with ADHD kids. And it is pretty amazing sometimes to see the difference. And these are kids who aren't necessarily in treatment. These are, kids who've got the full-blown ADHD, but some of them have the worst years ever with certain teachers, and some of them have the best years, even without help from any treatment or medication or anything. So it's important, okay? And if you can have an influence on that, and you are the parent, you are a powerful part of what they have to react to and respond to. But you've got to let them know that you know your stuff, that you know what your legal rights are, and that you're pretty sure you know what your child needs. I mean, when you're in private practice, you hear a lot of stories about what school systems say, or what teachers say, or even sometimes what administrators say, although administrators are usually a little more careful. But sometimes it's just total garbage. Like, they don't know anything about ADHD, and they don't know anything about what makes life better, makes the school experience better for an ADHD kid. So they just don't seem to have a grasp on that. So it's important to have a session with the teachers, each teacher. If you're in elementary school, you only got one to worry about, so great. Then we go, if you have to change schools for whatever reason, may just be because you got promoted out of the old school, make sure you get a chance to drive by and familiarize your child with what the school looks like and that sort of thing. If they're going back to the same school, not a problem. And then make sure you have attended, I'm almost all schools that I've ever heard of have a back to school night. It is important, make a good impression on each other, you and the teacher, so on and so forth. And then I talked last time something a little bit new, I think, but something you should be doing all along. You need to journal about your child. Journaling is a good thing to do anyway. It's helpful when things are not going so well, when you want to kind of look at yourself. It's great, but you want to get your child observations about your child. Because, okay, memory is not perfect, okay? Memory is not you having a digital recorder installed in your brain that records everything that ever happened to you. I tell my patients that memory is more like a mulch pile than it is a digital recorder. You put stuff in on top, and some of it settles to the bottom, and some of it stays up top, and some of it just sort of goes away. And the problem you have is you add new layers of memories every day. And with an ADHD kid, some things you will remember stronger than other things. The things you want to have really in your head and when you're observing and that sort of thing. What are their strengths? What are their natural abilities? What are their gifts, if you will? Okay? Because everybody's got a unique set of talents and abilities. And kids, they're a little bit they're underdeveloped usually, and they don't spontaneously develop them. They develop them because they practice them in some way or other. If you've read any of the talent books by Coyle, he talks about how world-class performers, whether they're athletic, musical, theatrical, whatever, are people who have learned how to practice correctly, one way or the other. Either they were taught it by a really good coach, or they learned it somehow spontaneously, or it was the way things were done in the home. But if you've got a kid who's a good athlete, you know it's because he practiced being a good athlete, or she practiced being a good athlete. And if someone's a good musician, they practiced at home. They were likely raised in a home where there was a lot of musicians, a lot of people played a lot of different instruments, and they were encouraged to do that, and they learned very early on that it was important to play music. Okay, that's something. If your family is a little less, what do I want to say, one specific area oriented, like my dad was a golf pro, so athletics were very important in my family. But my mother was a school teacher, so academics were also pretty important in my family. You need to keep track of what your child does well and what he does naturally, even if you don't instantly see them as a great talent that you can build a lot on. For instance, if he all the time or she all the time is by themselves and they're building things, they're taking pencils and balsa wood and stuff, making ships or whatever. But if you see that sort of thing, understand that that's the beginnings of creativity. That's the beginning of an orientation to the world, that they want to make stuff, that they enjoy making stuff in the world. And you may not remember that, but if you write it down and you review it every once in a while, you'll get more of a feel for your child and what's important to them and what they do well. I think, I have a brother who's an artist, and he's a metal sculptor. He's also a part-time musician. He's one of those people who's always busy, but you're never sure exactly what he's doing. But, he was into building things, making stuff. Oh, look what I did. This, that sort of the other. From as far back as I can remember. And I have a son. Kind of he was like him, but he was a little quieter about it. I thought he was going to be a great salesman. And I guess in some ways he is. He's a businessman kind of thing. But now he designs jewelry. And nobody in my family has ever been a jeweler or interested in jewelry or interested in gemstones or any of that sort of thing. Well, in my family, you go to the jewelry store when you're about to get married and you need an engagement ring and so on, and that's about it. You buy your watches at the sporting goods store, and you just never go to a jewelry store. Well, maybe for an anniversary present, and now I have this son who designs this stuff. So who knew? But early on, you could see that this was a young man who had a lot of energy, was really good with people and interacting and doing deals and that sort of stuff, but he also was creative. And hey, and nowadays it's even, because it isn't necessarily what you think is important. I told you last week, but I'm going to tell you again. Colleges are starting to establish e-sport teams, and they're giving scholarships to people who play video games. Who thought? Who would have thought? But it's true, and it's apparently going big guns. I know a number of just schools in my area are starting to establish these e-sport teams. And there are e-sport leagues and the national tournaments and so on and so forth and worldwide things. And also, there's a lot of money in this stuff. People are playing video games for big cash prizes. Frankly, this somewhat surprises me, but what the heck? I can't do any. Well, I'm not going to change it. I don't care to change it, but it's just kind of a surprise. But there it is. So if your child is a great video gamer, remember it's not totally that they're wasting time doing something they'll never use. Okay, finally, that was a very long review of old stuff, but now other things that you need to consider for getting your kiddo ready for going back to school is where are they going to do their homework, and that's important. You want a place that has a reasonable amount of quiet, that typically you don't want them to be able to hear the TV. Although you've got to understand that not all ADHD kids do better in total silence. Some of them like to have background noise. And it's hard to tell which is going to be which. But don't just assume that because he or she wants to listen to music that they're just goofing off. Okay, it may really help them. So wherever the study area, wherever that, yeah, excuse me, wherever the school workplace is, just make sure it's ready to go. Make sure it's clean and organized, and there aren't stacks of stuff from last year all over everywhere, and that it's ready to be used. And next thing you want to look at a little bit is their bedroom, and part of it is that most of the time with the start of the school year, that's the time when we buy a lot of clothes and that kind of thing. So you got to buy clothes, but they got to have a place to go. So you got to go through the old clothes and make sure, that the stuff that's been outgrown is gone, and the stuff that's, maybe that you wish they'd never bought in the first place, you can get rid of it. But anyway, you need to clean it out a little bit and just get it ready for school. You want to... Kids with ADHD, it's kind of a funny, they need structure, and sometimes the structure is just environmental. That this room just looks like it's structured and organized. And sometimes it's actual procedures that they need the structure on. But don't ignore the environment, okay? A totally disorganized environment will throw some kids off like crazy. So make sure their bedroom is organized, and the place they're going to study and do their homework is organized. The next thing is school shopping. I mean, there's nothing magic about that. You've been doing it for a while already, I'm sure. So you've got to go. And the earlier you go, typically that means you'll miss a lot of the rush and that sort of thing. I don't know about the money end of things. I don't know if it's actually cheaper during the return to school sales or not, but you would probably know better than I on that. But you've got to get them dressed so they head back to school with everything they need. Also, of course, the school supplies. It seems to me, if I remember way back in the dark ages when I went to school, the schools generally supplied a lot of especially in the elementary and I think up to junior high, they supplied everything, paper and stuff like that. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like they're supplying much of anything, so you have to go buy all that stuff. And make sure, that you got what you need. And I don't know. And this point is, getting kind of a little too specific, I think. But you want your kid to have what he or she needs to do well in school. Don't necessarily fall in love with the equipment, the ring binders and all that stuff that have all the fancy little extras and doodads on them, because most of the time they don't get used, and they just are things that break or fall off or get in the way. So you make sure that you got what your child needs to be organized, to get the homework done, da-da-da-da-da. Then apps. We talked about apps a little bit last time. And no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to keep your kid from being exposed to technology, to iPads, to iPods, to iPhones, and the Android versions of same. You're not going to get, well, those are things that they're going to need, but they're going to need all the stuff you get on an iPhone or an iPad to do homework. The school systems are going to expect that they know how to use these things, and a lot of schools they're providing them. Whichever it is in your school, go with it. But if you have to supply it yourself, just make sure you get them what they need technology-wise to do well. I mean, somebody told me that iPad has come out with a new version that's just specifically for school, and it's pretty cheap. It's a couple of $100 versus $1,000 or so, or more. So just do what you need to do there, and make sure you've got the apps that they need to do well. I mean, some kids like to have organizational apps, and they actually will use them. Okay, I'm old school. I have all these things on I have iPhones and iPads and all the other stuff, but I organize still on paper and pencil, just because it's easier for me, and I think I also tend to be thinking better when I'm writing something down than when I'm clicking little buttons on an electronic device. But that it kind of matters to your kid. ADHD kids usually need organization, and they need time management. The organization stuff is some way to prioritize and set in motion different projects and possibly track progress, although that's not essential. And the time management thing is you need some kind of a timer, and ideally it's something that shows the passage of time in some meaningful way to you, which may not be the click down on a timer, the standard 59, 58, 57, 56 kind of thing. They make timers that show time passage in big color sweeps, so that you can kind of look at it real fast and be able to tell how much time has passed. So I would suggest that that's something you should be considering anyway. The next thing is everybody talks about it. Everybody complains about it. Morning routine. Morning routine with ADHD kids. Okay, and it's not always going to be smooth. Let's put it that way. But remember, anything you do with an ADHD kid, the first thing you need to look at is yourself. Okay? ADHD kids react to your emotional state. Actually, all people react to your emotional state. But it's just with your ADHD kiddo, you're likely to have more problems. ADHDers will react more strongly, let's put it that way. So you need to be aware that if you can be cool and calm, you're going to have less problems. Let's just put it that way. So one of the things you need to do is you need to do your plan. How are you going to run mornings? Who needs to do what happens when? Are your kids old enough to have some responsibility themselves? Are they responsible enough to have some responsibility themselves? So you need to plan it, and you need to actually write it down and post it somewhere. It can't be so complicated that it's 4 pages or something, because nobody will look at that. But just, kind of a big, broad picture of what needs to be done, and what order at least it needs to be done to get you guys all out of the house on time. And so you write it down, you post it, well, usually you want to post it in both the bathroom, their bedroom, and probably in the kitchen or wherever you're eating breakfast. So they can, and some people actually like, they use like they plastic coat it and use like a grease pencil to mark it, or some people use little magnets, so they move them from needs to be done to got it done kind of thing. Whatever appeals to you and works in your family is good. And then the probably the last thing we want to talk about before we go to school is what you're feeding your kid. Okay, ADHD kids. Okay, nothing in food causes ADHD, but I will tell you from personal experience that ADHDers are more sensitive to swings in their blood sugar than other kids. Okay, the idea is you want to maintain a steady balance of blood sugar. Okay, when you wake up, you haven't eaten all night, your body's hungry and it needs the kind of ammunition, if you will, the kind of food that will get them their blood sugar to a normal level. You don't want to have a bunch of big swings up and down. Okay, and the big thing you want to watch out for is super sugary, super sweet, what's called simple carbohydrates. They're called simple carbohydrates because they metabolize very rapidly, or they digest very rapidly, and your blood sugar will go up really fast. I'm talking about really sugary cereals, things that are almost all, that are white flour, basically. Those are things that they digest fast. Okay, you want proteins and complex carbohydrates. Okay, proteins are meat, basically. Eggs, not bacon so much, but eggs and meat are the kinds of things that are high protein. And of course, you can do the soy thing and that sort of stuff, but presupposing you're kind of a mainstream family, they need a protein, and that can be as simple as putting peanut butter on their toast. I've been eating that for breakfast since I was 3 or 4 years old, so kind of a fan of peanut butter. But the other thing is complex carbohydrates. Those are the carbohydrates that you get in fruits and vegetables and whole grains. And that should be a significant part of their morning breakfast. Get bread that's got some food value to it, not necessarily bread that you can keep on the food counter for 3 months, because ain't nothing going to eat that's natural. Okay, so you don't want to feed them full of sugar, simple carbohydrates, and send them off to school, because I guarantee you'll be getting phone calls. And even if they're on medication, they will have more troubles if you load them up with simple carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, oatmeal, hay, and protein, peanut butter, eggs, whatever else you like for breakfast that's got a lot of protein in it. That will, and you ought to be looking at that diet-wise anyway, throughout the day. Their lunch and their dinner, it's important that they be healthy. Because basically what happens, okay, you put a high sugar load on something, you eat a lot of cereal that's sugar-coated and all that stuff, and your blood sugar goes screaming high, okay? It's way up. Then your body says, whoa, cripe, we're way out of balance. So you get a signal to your pancreas to start secreting insulin, and then your sugar drops. So between the time you eat it, about 30 minutes or 40 minutes later, you're at your high blood sugar is way up here, and then like 20 or 30 minutes later, it's way down low, and sometimes lower than it was when you first got up in the morning. Neither one of those are comfortable places. Okay, if you've been there, and you probably have, because we've all, gone nuts with M&Ms or something. You're uncomfortable and a little bit irritable when your blood sugar's high, and you're the same thing when your blood sugar's a little bit too low or a lot too low. You're fuzzy, you're groggy, you're foggy, you're a bit irritable around the edges. So the last thing you want for your ADHD kid is to have any of those things. Okay? And a diet that's relatively high in protein and complex carbohydrates, minimal simple carbs, minimal white flour, sugar, that kind of stuff, they'll do better, and it'll be easier to be around. Even if all they seem to want is chicken nuggets, you're better off feeding them chicken nuggets than you are a bunch of pastries. Okay, enough on that. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't really mean to go over the older stuff so much, but I'm kind of passionate about that stuff, and it's really, really important. And if you assume your duties as the parent of an ADHD child with some intention and some purpose, with a plan, with the knowledge that first thing you got to look at is yourself, then you look at them, you got to look at the situation, and you control all those variables, including diet, you've got a better chance that your child will do reasonably well in all areas of life. Okay? And so don't be afraid. Plan. Become aware. See what's going on. Pay attention to it. And come up with a plan and adjust the plan as it works or doesn't work. And that's the best you can do. And always, always remember, the world is not changed by normal people. Normal people tend to go along with the crowd. ADHD people don't necessarily go along with the crowd. And the world is not changed by normal people. So your ADHDer may be the one that changes the world for the better for all of us. So cherish that. And remember, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. I'm available at terrygingrasphd.com, and I am a fan of making the world safe for ADHD people. And we will catch you next time. Thank you.